Picture this. You're browsing the internet, minding your own business, when you stumble onto a video of a husky. The owner asks, very calmly, very casually, "Did you eat my sandwich?" The husky looks at the camera, looks away, looks back, then lets out the most dramatic, soul-crushing howl, like it just received news that its entire family has been exiled to Siberia. Then it looks straight into the camera again, completely unbothered. The sandwich is gone. There will be no accountability. And somehow, after 20 seconds of watching a dog give the performance of its life over a bred crime, you feel lighter, not just entertained, actually calmer. Your shoulders dropped, your face and mind unclenched. Something inside you got reset. So, what is actually going on here? Why does looking at animals, whether it's a husky loudly denying a sandwich crime, a deer standing perfectly still in a misty forest at dawn, or a fox curled up in snow, like a self-contained furry little universe, feel like someone hit a reset button inside your brain? The answer is stranger and deeper than you'd think. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why your nervous system was literally built for this. Let's start with something that sounds like science fiction, but is completely real. Your brain has its own dedicated module, not in a metaphorical sense, an actual neural circuit, purpose-built, that fires the instant it detects a living creature. Not a face, not a specific person, anything that's alive. Researchers call it biological motion detection, and it's been located in a specific region of the temporal lobe, called the superior temporal sulcus. What this circuit does is extraordinary. It doesn't just say, object moving, it says, alive. It picks up the subtle, irregular, organic rhythm of how a living thing moves, the tiny adjustments a sparrow makes on a branch, the lazy flick of a fish's tail, the way a cat's ear rotates toward a sound it heard a full few seconds before you did. Studies using fMRI scanners, the kind that show which parts of your brain are active in real time, have found that watching animals reduces activity in the amygdala. That's the part of your brain responsible for detecting threats. It's the alarm system, the thing that keeps you constantly scanning for danger, fearing rejection, replaying mistakes you made 3 years ago. When animals appear in your visual field, especially calm ones, the amygdala quiets down. Not completely, but noticeably, like someone turning the TV volume from 8 down to 3. That drop in amygdala activity is exactly what you experience as calm. But here's where it gets interesting. Because this reaction isn't just about looking at something cute. It's not the same as watching a satisfying video of someone organizing their bookshelf. Something specific is happening with animals that other soothing visuals simply don't produce. To understand why, we need to go back a bit. Your nervous system was built over millions of years in a world full of animals, not a world full of gadgets, traffic jams, and email. Your ancestors woke up every single morning surrounded by birds, insects, mammals, and reptiles. The presence of animals wasn't just background noise, it was the primary source of information about the environment around them. Here's a concept from ecology that changes everything once you understand it: the landscape of fear. In the wild, prey animals are constantly reading the behavior of other species to gauge how safe they are. A deer doesn't just look for wolves. It watches the birds, it watches the squirrels, it watches the fish in the stream. Because if the birds are calm, if the squirrels are going about their squirrel business, if the fish are rising to the surface in the late afternoon, that means nothing alarming is nearby. The calm behavior of one species signals safety to every other species in the area. Ecologists call this cross-species alarm signaling, and it is one of the most sophisticated real-time threat assessment systems that has ever evolved. Your brain is running that exact same system, right now, without you even knowing it. When you see a dog sleeping peacefully, when you see deer grazing without lifting their heads, when you see birds singing and flitting around in the trees, the ancient threat detection hardware in your brain reads those signals and concludes, the environment is safe. The alarm can stand down. And that conclusion travels through your nervous system and produces a measurable physical response. Your heart rate slows, your breathing deepens. Cortisol, the stress hormone, drops. You feel calmer. You didn't learn this response. You inherited it. It has been running this way across 2 to 3 million years, from the time your ancestors read the behavior of every animal around them as a matter of life and death. Now let's talk about what science has actually measured, because the data here is genuinely wild. A researcher named Roger Ulrich, a professor of architecture and health environments, conducted a study in the 1980s that went on to become one of the most cited in environmental psychology. He studied patients recovering from surgery. Some had hospital rooms with windows facing a brick wall. Others had windows facing trees and a small pond with wildlife. The patients with the nature view, not some dramatic wilderness panorama, just trees and a few animals going about their day, recovered faster, asked for less pain medication, and were discharged sooner. Animals, faster surgical recovery. Simply because of animals. That finding launched an entire field of research. Dr. Miles Richardson at the University of Derby has run large-scale studies on what he calls nature connectedness, measuring the psychological benefits of brief encounters with animals and natural environments. His team found that just 2 hours per week of exposure to nature, including wildlife, produces measurable improvements in mental health and stress levels. Not 2 hours a day, 2 hours a week. That works out to about 17 minutes a day. And in Japan, there's a practice that has been official government health policy since 1982. It's called Shinrin-yoku, which translates to forest bathing, not hiking, not exercise. Just walking slowly through a forest and paying attention to what's around you. The physiological research on it is extensive. Studies by Dr. Yoshifumi Miyazaki at Chiba University found that forest environments lower cortisol levels by around 12%, drop blood pressure, and reduce sympathetic nervous system activity. That's the fight-or-flight system, by significant margins compared to urban environments. The key variable wasn't the trees themselves. It was the animals, the birds you heard, the insects you saw, the evidence of life surrounding you. But let's go a little deeper, because this story gets even stranger. There's a phenomenon in neuroscience called soft fascination, a term coined by Rachel and Stephen Kaplan at the University of Michigan. Their attention restoration theory describes two kinds of mental engagement: directed attention, the kind you use for work, problem-solving and decision-making, the kind that exhausts you, and involuntary attention, which kicks in when something captures your interest effortlessly, without any conscious effort at all. A bird in flight, a squirrel burying something, a cat staring intensely at something you can't see. These moments demand just enough attention to occupy the mind without straining it. They produce what the Kaplans called fascination without fatigue. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, worrying, and going in mental circles, gets a break. Not because it shuts off, but because it stops running in loops. And here's the twist. Animals are uniquely suited to produce this effect because they are genuinely unpredictable. A screensaver is calming but dull. A painting is calming but frozen. An animal is calming because you truly have no idea what it's going to do next. A bear might scratch its back against a pine tree like it's having the single greatest day of its entire existence. A fox might stop, stare straight at you, tilt its head, and then decide you're simply not interesting enough. A dolphin might leap out of the water for no reason anyone can figure out. That low-level unpredictability keeps you anchored in the present moment, without dragging you into anxiety about the future or regret about the past. It's a kind of accidental mindfulness. The animal does it for you. Let's talk about fish for a moment, because they deserve more credit than people usually give them. Aquariums have been placed in hospitals, dental offices, and healthcare facilities for decades. And for a long time, everyone assumed this was purely aesthetic. They look nice. They make waiting rooms feel less grim. But researchers at the National Marine Aquarium in Plymouth, working alongside psychologists from the University of Exeter and the University of Plymouth, ran a formal study in 2015. They measured heart rates, blood pressure, and self-reported mood in people looking at tanks with varying levels of fish. Empty tank, slightly calming. Tank with plants and scenery, but no fish. A bit calmer. Tank with fish. Significant drops in heart rate and blood pressure. And more species diversity in the tank. Even more pronounced calming effect. The conclusion was clear. It wasn't the blue light or the sound of the water. It was the fish, the presence of other living creatures doing what they do. And then there's the bee, the humble, possibly underrated bumblebee. A research team at the University of Sussex, studying insect cognition, discovered something remarkable. Bees display what appears to be an optimism bias. When given a mildly positive experience, they subsequently evaluate ambiguous situations more favorably. This was interpreted as possible evidence of emotional states in insects. A bee, in some functional sense, might actually feel good. You might be thinking, what does bee optimism have to do with my stress levels? Here's what. It changes the way you think about the animal world you're observing. When you understand that the butterfly visiting your balcony isn't just a little machine running a flower visiting program, when you grasp that there's something it actually feels like to be a bee flying through warm afternoon light, that understanding transforms the encounter. The calm you feel watching a butterfly becomes something richer. It becomes a form of genuine connection. Now let's talk about an animal that takes the concept of stress-free living to a level most humans can only dream of: the honey badger. If you've never seen a honey badger, picture an animal roughly the size of a medium dog, built like a miniature tank, covered in skin so thick and loose that it can rotate inside it to bite back at whatever is currently biting it. Honey badgers have been documented casually walking up to a pride of lions to steal their food, getting stung hundreds of times by bees and just continuing on as if nothing happened, and escaping enclosures in ways that are geometrically improbable. They don't run from anything. They don't seem to recognize the concept of a threat. Researchers describe the honey badger's behavioral profile as one of the most extraordinary in the entire animal kingdom, not because they're aggressive, but because they operate from what appears to be a baseline of total, unshakable self-assurance. No alarm in the honey badger's nervous system stays activated for long. It handles the situation, then moves on. Watching a honey badger deal with a cobra with an attitude that is equal parts dismissive and contemptuous is paradoxically deeply calming. Because somewhere in your brain, it delivers an important message. Most threats are survivable. Let's move to elephants, because what elephants do for the human nervous system deserves to be properly understood. Elephants are one of the very few animals on Earth known to display sustained cross-species empathy. That means something documented and studied, not just anecdote. Rangers at African wildlife reserves have documented wild elephant herds pausing near injured humans, moving carefully around the person rather than trampling through, and in some cases, remaining in the area. There are also documented accounts of elephants covering the bodies of deceased humans with branches and leaves, the same mourning behavior they display for their own dead. Watching an elephant, even on a screen, produces a particular kind of calm that researchers have connected to the perception of intelligence and emotional depth. Your brain recognizes something in the way elephants move, the deliberate slowness, the weight, the apparent attentiveness to the world around them, and reads that recognition as a safety signal. Large, calm, intelligent creature nearby. Everything is fine. Bears deserve their own moment here. Not because they're dangerous, but because bears, in their natural behavior, are one of the finest demonstrations of an animal completely at peace with its own existence. A bear catching salmon in a river is total presence. No second guessing, no self-consciousness, no performance. Just a bear doing what it does. A bear lying in a meadow in late summer, eating blueberries one by one, looks like the most contented creature that has ever lived. Research into which specific animal behaviors produce the strongest calming responses in humans has consistently found that feeding behaviors, animals eating calmly and methodically, rank very high. Something about watching an animal eat with zero anxiety sends your nervous system the message that resources are available. There is no crisis. Right now is fine. And then we come back, as we always do, to the dog, and specifically to that husky from the beginning. Here's the thing about huskies that makes them almost uniquely suited to producing the response we've been describing. As a breed, they are a living demonstration that you can be extremely dramatic and completely fine at the same time. A husky howling because dinner is 2 minutes late is not a distressed animal. It's a theatrical animal making excellent use of its vocal range to communicate something it considers philosophically significant. And the reason that's calming rather than alarming is that your brain can tell the difference. It reads the body language, the loose posture, the tail, the eyes, and concludes, this creature is fine. It might even be performing for you. When you make eye contact with a calm, friendly animal, both your body and the animal's body release oxytocin. You probably know oxytocin as the bonding hormone, the one released between parents and newborns, between people who love each other. But it also releases between species. A study by Dr. Miho Nagasawa at Azabu University in Japan measured oxytocin levels in both dog owners and their dogs before and after sessions of mutual gaze. Both went up, not just the humans. The dog's oxytocin increased too. The animal is chemically bonding with you when you look at it. You are chemically bonding with it. The calm isn't just in your head. It's a full-body hormonal response that evolved across 15,000 years of humans and dogs looking into each other's eyes. And this effect isn't limited to dogs. Researchers have documented oxytocin release in people interacting with horses, cats, and in some studies, even while watching videos of animals they have a positive relationship with. That's worth pausing on for a second. Watching a video of a sleeping cat is enough to trigger a hormonal cascade that your brain evolved to deploy in moments of safety and connection. Horses, specifically, are used in a form of treatment called equine-assisted therapy. And one of the reasons it works is something you might not expect. Horses are animals with extraordinarily sensitive nervous systems. They read the emotional state of everything around them through subtle cues, posture, breathing rhythm, muscle tension. When a person approaches a horse in a state of anxiety, the horse responds. It moves away. It becomes wary. But when that person regulates their own nervous system, consciously slows their breathing, releases tension in their shoulders, the horse responds to that too. It relaxes. It moves closer. It might stand quietly alongside the person. Therapists say it works because the horse provides immediate, honest, non-judgmental feedback that no human therapist can quite replicate. The horse doesn't care about your diagnosis. It only cares about whether you're safe to be near right now. And there's something in that feeling, in being evaluated entirely on the state of your nervous system rather than your history or social standing, that is deeply, unexpectedly relieving. Let's zoom out one final time, because there's one word that captures everything we've been describing, and once you know it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. That word is biophilia. Biophilia is the hypothesis proposed by biologist Edward O. Wilson in 1984 that humans have an innate, genetically shaped affinity for other living things, not a preference. An affinity, something closer to a need. Wilson argued this connection wasn't cultural or aesthetic. It was evolutionary. We lived within complex webs of animal life for so long that our brains were literally shaped around that relationship. The presence of animals signals health, abundant resources, ecological stability. Their absence, no bird song, no insects, no tracks or movement of wildlife, signals something wrong. A landscape stripped of life is one that feels threatening at a level you can't quite articulate, but absolutely feel. Modern life, for many people, is a kind of enforced absence of animals. Apartments with no yard, cities with no bird song, offices with no windows. And gradually, over years, the lack of contact with living creatures in nature adds a low-level hum of stress to everything. And then you see a honey badger take on a snake like it's a minor administrative inconvenience, or a bear eating blueberries, or honey with the focused serenity of a meditation master, or an elephant pausing on the savannah to gaze at the horizon, or a husky standing in its kitchen, absolutely devastated about a sandwich. And something releases in your mind. Not because they're cute, but because 2 million years of evolution, for one brief moment, feel answered. Like the part of your brain that has been quietly asking all this time, are we safe? Are we surrounded by life? Is the world still working? Finally, for just a moment, gets a yes. That's what animals give your brain. Not just pleasure, an answer. The oldest answer, the one your nervous system has been listening for since long before you were born. So the next time you find yourself accidentally watching a husky howl in despair for no apparent reason, or pausing on a video of a fox in the snow, or sitting still while a cat gazes up at you with devoted fascination, know that you are not being distracted. You are being healed in exactly the way that nature intended. Remember that husky and the missing sandwich at the start of this video. Now you know that moment wasn't just funny. It was your ancient brain, for 17 seconds, finally receiving the signal it had been waiting for. Everything is alive. Everything is fine. If you love animals and want to spend more time around them, hit the like button and subscribe so we can keep exploring fascinating topics like this together.